Hello. I always need to turn the music down. I need to go from like, it's one of those, if I have it up at the normal volume that I have, I can't think and talk. There are dozens of us, yeah. Hey, what up to everyone in the chat? It's Friday. Happy Friday. You made it to the end of the week. I managed to get some cool stuff working today. So I'm going to go over that. Reminder, if you have any questions, last stream we got the question, what is this? So I answered that, so I'm happy to answer whatever questions. But yeah, I'm gonna go over some of the cool stuff that I got working today. I'm trying to think if this is the only PR. Yeah, I think we talked about that one this morning. But if you weren't here this morning, the plan over the focus of work for a good chunk of this week has been getting indirect routing working. Let me pull this off. So as a reminder for anyone who wasn't watching this morning, indirect routing is this case where we have some device that has an uplink and a downlink and is not just directly connected to another device or like hub and, star topology type of thing, but indirect routing or bridging, or I probably come up with new terms every stream, but yeah, what is the meaning of life? Apparently 42. I don't have a better answer than that. Do routing, make machines talk to machines, is my best answer so far. But yeah, so I've gotten some stuff working. Mostly it's like filling in the gaps, and it's gone relatively smooth actually. Today I was able to knock out not exactly everything working, but a good chunk of stuff working. Let's see, we can do demo first and code second. That maybe is more fun. It's not polished enough where it's like a cool everything works demo. It's like we look and we see a couple of log lines, and then when we see a couple of log lines, we see that it worked. So I've got a router and I've got two clients here. So we can go ahead and run our router. And then let's also run these at info level. So right now we have, in the top left, we have a router that doesn't have any devices connected. The only one it sees is itself, actually. So it does discovery, and it finds itself, unsurprisingly. So we can go ahead and run another client down here. Nope, not actually in the right folder. Oh, and this needs to move too, because I'm in the wrong folder everywhere, because I copied these out into new projects. Ergot seed router, cd ergot, what do I call it, bridge client? Yeah, ergot bridge. Okay, so let's try this again. And some stuff's commented out, so it's going to complain about that. That's fine. So let's go ahead and connect our first. Well, let me do this one first. Let's go ahead. Oh, that's going to be behind my head anyway. Okay, so let's move that back up there so it's not obstructed by my head. So this runs. It's saying no discovery because it's not connected yet. And then it does discovery, and it got some information, and then it did a thing, and that worked. So we can see that we added netid 1 node 2, and if I run this one, we can see that this does kind of the same thing that we saw up there. And we can see that we discovered netid 3. So we might wonder, where's that netid 2? And where netid 2 went was, well, what this client did is it did discovery. It went looking for the it did service discovery. So it went looking for a service that could assign it a network ID. And so it sent out a message that says, hey, does anyone know someone who can hand out net IDs? And so it sends this out as a broadcast. It got heard by this one. This one said, maybe I can. Let me check. Yes, I do have a service for that. You can reach that service at address 1, node 1, port 3. And so this one went excellent. That's a great thing. So I'm going to go ahead and send a request to get a NetID assignment. And it got back, okay. So everything went well. And it got a seed net assignment for NetID 2 that expires in 30 seconds, and it has some expiration and refresh information. So when this one connected as a device, the router went, okay, cool, you're NetID 1. And then after it connected, it went, cool, I'm NetID 1. Can you give me another NetID? Because I have a downstream interface that would like a NetID. And it goes, sure, you can have NetID 2. And then when this one joined, it went, well, 1 is taken by this one, and also it has a sub assignment of 2. And so when you connect, you get 3. And then this one did the discovery as well. And then it got assigned NetID 4. And actually, if I had waited a little bit for these to time out, they would have eventually recycled those NetIDs and things like that. So now if I do... Actually, right now if I do it, it's going to assign me NetID 5. Because right now it actually doesn't notice that IDs are expired until the next time you try and go and use them. So when you go to assign, it goes, oh, I have one that's dead. So if I do this, it'll go... let's see, what did this become? This said... Oh, no, maybe it did. Maybe it did time them out. Oh, okay, because it probably was sending some other packets regularly and then decided that those were gone. So yeah, this is actually a couple of things working. I didn't have service discovery before this, and I didn't have NetID assignment before this. So this PR does both of those. We've got the crowd quietly listening, so I've got interest still. But yeah, let's look at the code. There's not a ton. There's a lot of like little stuff that changed as I was tweaking it. So we have. Let's tell you what. Let's go to the first one to look at is services. So I added some new services. So the first service that I added is a socket query handler. Actually, I lied. Let's go to the NetID starting at inner. So we added here this new method on both NetID and NetID inner called withSockets, that you give it a function or a closure, and it calls that function with an iterator over all of the sockets, which says like, cool, you can give me a closure, and then you can walk over all the sockets that are available. And this way, you can use this for things like, hey, do I have any sockets that match these characteristics? And this is just iterating over the socket queue. So it like locks the mutex, iterates over all the sockets, and then, you can return whatever you want from the closure. So then bouncing over to services, we have this socket query handler. So this, we'll bounce over to well-known first. So for socket query, you can make a request that has this information. You can say, I want a socket that has a certain key, which is like the schema ID, basically, of some kind of socket. You can give it a name requirement that it should have none, like no name, a specific name, or any, which basically means it could be none or any value of a name hash. What kind of frame it is. So is it like an endpoint? Is it a topic? Is it something else? And is the socket that you're looking for Boolean? So basically you can just say, hey, I want a socket that has these qualities. And you can just send this out as a broadcast message. So this is defined as a topic. So you'll actually send this out and it kind of like floods out. So anyone who has a socket matching this will reply back. Then in return, you get if someone goes, oh yes, I do have that, you'll get back a response that says, we can look at the source address for where it comes from, the name, because maybe you said any or whatever, so it'll have the name of that socket, and it'll have the port that socket is on. And then I actually move it over to an address, because the source address has the right network ID and node ID, but it has the wrong port because it's coming from another port. So basically, this socket query response address is just the source address, but we replaced the port with the right one, so it's an address now. So the way that service works is it goes, cool, I'm going to listen for topic messages. Whenever I get a topic message, like the specific Ergot socket query topic, I'm going to go through my sockets and I'm going to look for that and find the first one that matches. So I have this query searcher that just iterates through all of the sockets. And this iterator actually only iterates over ones that are discoverable. So for example, when you have an endpoint server, the server is discoverable, but if you're sending a request to a server and you have a response socket open, the response socket isn't discoverable because we say we shouldn't let anyone just respond to that. We should, only have the one that's actually responding to us have that information. So we look through all of our sockets. We see if it's, and I kind of like just by what is the cheapest comparison first. So FrameKind is just a U32. So we go, do these U32s match? If yes, is it, do you want broadcast and it's not a broadcast, then skip. If it's not supposed to be broadcast and it is broadcast, skip. There's probably some XOR logic I could do here. Then we match on the name requirement and is it what we're looking for, and then finally we check if the 8-byte key value matches, because that's like a 8-byte compare. Can users use the topic macro to define their own topics? Yes, exactly. Any type that is serializable and you can put a schema on, and I have a postcard schema macro derive, you can define any type. So basically if your type is something you can use with Serde, then you can turn it into a topic, and same for endpoints, like a request response. An endpoint is a request response, and you can define the type of the request and the type of the response, and we'll look at that in a minute. So there's a question in chat. So if all of it passed, we return some inside of the for loop, and then if we get to the end of the for loop and we didn't find what we're looking for, we return none. So if we go and look at the bridge client, this is a little hacked up right now, but we do discovery. We come up with our query. We say we want a server, or we want a socket that matches the Ergot seed router assignment endpoint. I'm not good at short names, but it is the Ergot seed router assignment endpoint. Specifically, we look for a socket that has the request key that we're looking for. We say, I don't care what name it is, although technically I think this is always none, so I could say none. We're looking for a FrameKind, so we're looking for something that accepts endpoint request messages and is not a broadcast socket. So we send this out, we discover sockets, and then we see if we get one. And if we got one, then we go further than here. But now we can go look at that discovery code. So the way that works is we open up a topic subscription for the Ergot socket query response topic. So basically, we start listening for replies, and then we send a request for this query. So we broadcast this out, and then we wait for some amount of time, and we grab all the responses, and we stick them in a vec, and then eventually when this times out, we respond with whatever we got in that vec. So it could be 1, 0, a lot of responses, but we just respond with them back basically in the order that they came in on. So that's what our demo gets. So our bridge client, like I said, it sends out that query. It waits the amount of time, so it'll wait up to a second for all the responses. And then if we did get any responses, it just says nope, and then it just tries again and loops around. But when we get any kind of response, we print that out. So we saw that on the terminal. We saw the disco said. So we got a response with an address with no name, and the network ID of 1 and the node ID of 1 and the port ID of 3. And so we said, great, we're going to send an endpoint request to that address with the request type of seed router assignment endpoint. So we're going to make a request. Please assign me a net ID. And there's no data because it just uses the source address as who is the requester. And then based on whatever that response is, we print that out. And what we got back was okay. So okay basically means that we got a response back from the server we sent to. So like the network was okay. This is specifically the server on the other side saying, yeah, sure, I can assign you a network ID. And so it did assign me a net ID of 3 with expiration and some data. And it says, hey, when you want to refresh that, you can use my same address, so the network 1 node ID 1, but instead of like the assignment is on port 3, but the refresh is on port 2. So later, if we want to go back and refresh it, we can send it to 112 instead of 113. So that's it going through all that. What did I not show? I did not show the service for assignment, I don't think. So I also have a service that does both the request, or like the assignment request, and the refresh request. So the way I have it set up right now is you get assigned a network ID, and it goes, okay, cool, you have this for some amount of time. Kind of like DHCP, if you're familiar with DHCP on normal networking. But there's also an expiration time where we say every now and then you have to refresh this. But so Alexander, you're asking, we can't do this with bridging yet. I'm not sure what you mean. This is like working towards being able to do bridging. Because right now, well, once this does work and once we have bridging, this will work across bridging because these requests are broadcast messages. So we'll do a discovery request that says like, who has a seed router endpoint? It'll get to this one, and then we'll forward it on, and this one won't respond because it doesn't have a seed router running. And then when it actually does hit the seed router, this one does, and it will respond, but the source address is the same, so it will actually respond all the way back directly to this device. So it'll go broadcast, repeat, and then this one goes, oh yeah, I have that, and it will send a message directly back to here, and it'll go back to this device. So yeah, this will work over broadcast or over bridging once we have bridging, but that's what I'm working on right now. Let me know if that doesn't answer your question. Okay, so the seed router request handler actually handles both the request, like the assignment, and the refresh. So we set up a refresh server. So this is an endpoint, the seed router refresh endpoint. We figure out what its port is. Then we set up the assignment server. And then we just select on these. So we say, like, whichever one gets back an answer first. And as far as I know, if I haven't screwed anything up, then sockets should be cancellation safe, which means it doesn't matter if both of them come in at the same time, you don't lose any messages. But if we get an assignment request, we call handle assign. And if we get a refresh request, we call handle refresh. And what assign does is it goes into our net stack, manage profile, because the profile is what actually provides like the routing capabilities. And we ask it to request a seed net assignment. And as a source ID, we use the header of the message we got. We set its source network ID, and we're saying, hey, someone from this network ID is asking for a new net ID. And if we get one, then we go, okay, cool, and we send back the response. So this could either be an okay or an error, but we just respond as a server back to the origin with the response. So this sends back, yes, we do have this. And then same on refresh. I don't have any refresh demo, but it basically works the same way. We're just kind of like proxying access to our profile, and we're asking it, hey, please refresh. So the way that, so when you do a request, you actually don't send any data. So who is asking about this? Aria. You were asking, like, can people make custom topics? Yes, they can. And they can also make custom endpoints. But this is one of those things, like, in Ergot, I'm actually using user space tools to also do the, like, built-in routing stuff, just so I know that they work, basically. It's kind of like the Rust compiler using the standard library inside of the compiler. It's like, it's dog fooding. It's making sure that the things you're building actually work. So the assignment endpoint takes no data because it implicitly uses the source address of the packet. And then it sends back this response, which is actually a result of either success or an error. And then the refresh endpoint takes a refresh request and gives back a response. So what that request looks like... Where do I define that? Oh, that's in... Where do I define that? Oh, here we go. We need to give it some information, like to make sure that you're actually the person who requested it originally. It says, okay, what network ID are you trying to refresh? It'll also still check the source ID to make sure it's still the same device requesting the refresh. And I have this refresh token, which is just like a randomly generated number when you do the request to make sure that like the person who originally did the request is also still doing the refresh. It's not a lot of security. It's like that picture of the Cheeto in the lock kind of security. But yeah, it's mostly just to catch bugs, to make sure that if I'm like requesting the wrong thing in the wrong place, I get an error about it. But yeah, and this all goes into, there's some pull requests in previous days that actually set up like this routing table and the ability to grant these things. And this is mostly just wiring it up to interfaces. So we can look at, I don't think we've not looked at the seed router yet. But actually it's really boring. The only thing I had to add was I had to add the socket discovery endpoint, and there's a service for that. So you don't have to write any code. You just have to add it. I guess I could spawn these all as tasks, but right now they're just selected. Like all the, background services I have running here. So we're running one for device discovery, ping requests, serving discovery. Customer doing oh no, okay. This is a function I have, which like goes out and discovers everyone on the network. So this answers requests from others when they want to do discovery, and this one actually does discovery and will discover new devices. I handle logs from other devices, and then I have seed requests. So anyone who asks for like seed router assignments, and then anyone who wants to discover sockets, for example, to find the seed router. So even when if I relaunch these and they all get different port numbers and stuff like that, this process will still work. There's like no hard-coded anything in this right now. So like when a client connects, it gets assigned a net ID. Then when it does discovery, it goes out and finds that wherever it is, and then it does the request and it gets assigned that. So it's all like, there's no fakery other than the fact that the client that's doing the request doesn't actually have a second interface to assign that to. It's just getting one for funsies. And I don't have any kind of rate limiting or anything on this. So it's just getting one. And then, yeah. Eventually, I need to turn this bridge client, because right now it's just an edge device, which means it only has a single interface. So if we look at our... basically, right now, this edge device is one of these, where it only has one interface, but it's pretending to be one of these, where it has the upstream interface and the downstream interface. And so the next thing I need to build is actually writing a profile implementation that has an upstream and a downstream. But right now it's just pretending. But the actual like conversation that it would have up here totally works, which is nice. Yeah, the device is like, trust me, bro, I totally have more friends. Yeah, they go to college in Canada. You wouldn't know them. But yeah, that's exactly what it's doing, is it's pretending to do that. But that's working, and I'm very, very pumped about that. Like I said, the next step up is to do something like this. I'll probably do it. And right now, some of this only works on STUD, so I'll eventually need to make versions of this that work on microcontrollers, but in a lot of cases it'll just be like a heapless vec instead of a vec, But yeah, I think it'll be fairly mechanical to port some of these to no stud. The big, like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this is writing a profile for this, because I don't have anything like that. I have profiles that are central nodes, basically, and I have profiles that are edge nodes, but I don't have anything that's both. So that will be a fun one to write. Probably, like I said, starting with a TCP socket and then there. The other thing is, this demo that I have working is over TCP because it's running on desktop and it's on this, but all of this service stuff is defined on the, what are they called? Edge routers, which means this should work for serial ports and USB ports as well as TCP ports. Like, you don't have to change anything. Like, we could copy this over to make, like, the Ergot NUSB seed router, and actually, like, all the code works exactly the same because this stuff is implemented on, like, the top level direct router, not any of the specific direct router impulse. So once I have an embedded version, I can move it over from the TCP direct router over to the USB router. Let's see. Couple of questions. Will the bridge client handle telling the seed router about the net IDs it already has? So, Aria, right now, the way that I'm building the network is that only the seed router, where there can only be one on the entire network, can assign net IDs. So if you have like a kind of complex network like this, it kind of, like, the first one connects to the seed router, gets an address, then this one will assign, then it'll request an address for this one, and then this link will have a net ID, which means that on this device, this link comes up and it goes, oh great, I have another one. So this one will make a request, and that, so right now there can only be one device on the entire network that's handing out net IDs. I will need to figure out something for that, because, for example, if we want the rest of this network to work when we're not hooked up to a PC, this will need to be like at least a miniature seed router. But what I'll probably do, like in my mind, what the next version of this will look like is when this one goes, I'm acting as a seed router, and then all of a sudden it realizes that there's someone bigger than it, it'll probably just send messages down this way being like, okay, everyone reset. Like, not software reset, but like reset all your net IDs. I'm giving up. Try again in a second. And then it'll stop being a seed router and do that. Or we could have something more complex where if something joins a network, we do some way of syncing that. But right now, my rule is basically there can only be one seed router on the network at a time. And my kind of rough plan for handling this, like on a priority level, is when we find a seed router with a higher priority than us, or like when we are a seed router and we find another seed router, that we just go, okay, never mind, I'm not a seed router anymore, and we stop being a seed router. I haven't totally figured that out yet. That's still in progress. Alexandra says, yo, if the network works all the way to Canada, that'd be cool. Yeah, if I know anyone in Canada, we could set up a TCP tunnel. That'd be cool. It's not really designed for that, though. Then Baum is asking, so a network is all the devices that can communicate directly with each other, and as soon as it has to hop, it crosses a network boundary. So in terms of vocabulary here, addresses in Ergot have three parts. Let's go look at the docs for this. So they have a network ID, which is basically a network segment. They have a node ID, which is their like device address, and then sockets each have a port ID. So in this case, this link would be netID 1, and then this would be on netID 1, this would be like netID 1 node 1, and this would be netID 1 node 2. And then if this was netID 2, this would be netID 2 node 1, netID 2 node 2. When I have connections like TCP connections like this, so this will be netID 1, netID 2, netID 3, and this will always be 111 for the node address, and this will be 222. So This is like 1 1 1 2 2 1 2 2 3 1 3 2. Eventually, when we have like a bus, eventually like this, so this would be like net ID 1. Because this is a bus of like RS485, this would all be one net ID. So this would be like net ID 2, node ID 1. So like 2 1, 2 2, 2 3, 2 4. So basically, like net ID is any network link where everyone can hear each other. For a lot of them, which are like point to point, then there will only ever be 2 node IDs on that net ID. But yeah, each place where you go from like one interface to another, that's like a routing step that we have to do. So right now, like I was saying, we can route messages from here to here, or here to here, or we could even route messages like here that go up to here and then get sent over here. So like these two can talk to each other indirectly through the router. But yeah, the plan is to be able to do this more indirectly in the future. Would it be smart to make some kind of demo harness for making an arbitrary network with just TCP sockets instead? Yes, it would be. I would love that. If someone can or would do that, Alexandra, that would be dope. I would love to have that for tests. You can do it already with the TCP sockets, or we could implement something that Postcard RPC does, but I haven't done in Ergot yet, is just using like normal Tokyo channels for the network link, like a pair of Tokyo channels, so that you can spawn them up in like integration tests or whatever without actually needing like actual TCP ports assigned. But yeah, Alexandra, that would be dope. If you have inspiration to make that testing harness, I would love that. That could go in either the conformance folder, or we could make up another harness kind of thing. I think definitely once we have complex routing, we will desperately need that as basically like topology fuzzing, if that makes sense. Aria says, at work we have the use case you just described where the microcontrollers need to talk to each other even when the PC isn't connected yet. Aria, send me a message. I'd love to have you try this out. This is exactly what this is for. I'm building this because I've had people ask me for this before, and so I'm finally building it so that you can just use it. But yeah, if your work is interested in that, hell yeah, sponsor me. If not, just try it out and let me know. But yeah, if you have any questions on the Ergot repo, so the repo for this is James Munn's Ergot. We have a link to our Matrix chat here. Also, my profile, there's an email address. So, oh, nice. Send me a message or just open up a discussion or an issue. And Aria, if we can get this working for your work, then let me know. Like I said, this routing doesn't totally work yet, but I'm building towards that, and it's exactly the use case that I want to build. Yeah, definitely join the Matrix. The Matrix is here. And so wave hi and say hi in the Matrix if you join. But yeah, that's Unbound. Okay, cool. Sounds like it answered your question. But yeah, that's what I got working. I'm pumped about it. I don't know. Let's see, I fly to China end of next week, so there'll probably be streams on Monday and Wednesday, but not Friday, and then there won't be the following week. I'll put up a notice here that I'm not going to be streaming. But yeah. I'm not gonna write slides. But yeah, I think I'll probably just talk mostly about like the inspiration for it, and I can get a little bit into technical stuff, but especially because it's always a fun balance of how technical you get in these talks. But I think the talk that I gave on Postcard RPC at Eurorust, no, it wasn't Eurorust, it was Rust Week in the Netherlands, I think a year and a half ago now, was a good length. But yeah, I'll probably do something like that again. Yeah, I'm definitely going to make slides in typed. I've started doing all my slides in typed. So the slides are going to look... Well, no, they gave me a template. We'll see. They gave me a template to use. I want to see if I can extract that into typed. If not, then I'll do something. But yeah, Typest is awesome. If you haven't seen the SDR podcast, all of my slides for that are in Typest. So the SDR podcast. SDR. Oh no, I'm zooming the wrong window. SDR-podcast.com/episodes and intrusive lists. View the presentation. Yeah, these slides are all in Typest, which is super cool. Actually, let me bring up. I can bring up Typest. Oh, I have to log in because it's been a minute. Yeah, Typest is super nice for writing slides because you can just write whatever, and I basically just have a thing that I copy and paste into all of my slides. And then slides are just like line break, page break, line break, page break, image. Like, it's a very, like, you can get very much into a style very quickly. A+ would recommend Typest. Type Superior. Only problem with Typest is that I can't get a preview window in either Zed or NeoVim. Oh, that's a bummer. You probably could do something with like Watch Exec because you can make it either spit out a PDF or PNGs. So you could like maybe watch that and like dump PNGs out to a folder and look at that. But I don't know. I did try and do that, and it's kind of annoying that the macOS preview app doesn't update PDFs if you update them. You have to like close it and reopen it. I'm sure there's some other PDF viewer app that does do that, but it would be cool to have that for this. But honestly, the Typest website is very cool. I think you don't. I don't think you have to pay. I pay for Typest, but I don't think you have to for this. I'm sure there's some limitation, but I think this is built in. And the other cool thing is you can share this, and it's kind of like HackMD where you get both, which is very neat. Typest has watch built in. I used that. Oh, cool. Typest is watch built in on macOS. You have to click into the preview, and on Windows it just doesn't work. You have to have the PD open. Yeah, but then I can click on the text in the preview window and have it match the same place in the code. That is very cool. Yeah, being able to like jump to stuff, like even the header and stuff. Oh, cool! It does like a little splash animation. I didn't know it did that. Yeah. It is cool that you can run the compiler locally, but the web app is also really, really nice. Like, A+ would recommend. I pay for this with work money. But yeah, it's cool. Just for slides, I would use it. But I also use it for reports and stuff. So, it is very cool for that. But yeah. Gonna write slides. If I can't have Vim motions, I ain't using. That's fair. I have used Sublime for like damn near 15 years now, and I'm still like, when I had a ThinkPad, like I go back and forth between Macs and ThinkPads basically once a generation. So like every 3 or 4 or 5 years, I switch between a Mac and a ThinkPad. I use the track point, like the little red nub on a ThinkPad, all the time. And so I never got super crazy into Vim key bindings because my hand is on the mouse at the same time. It's, it's a little different on Mac, but you've got the trackpad, which is nice. I don't know. Yeah, good for you. I never got into Vim or Emacs. I'm a GUI text editor person. It's boomer energy. Hell yeah. Boomer time. Like being able to just do the basics of like multi-selection, like with Alt-D, or I can just like Alt-click and things like that. I feel like I get most of the things that people say that they like Vim for, and I could just do here. But I don't know. I'm not gonna hate on your workflow, but it is hilarious that you were saying that using an editor that's probably older than I am or not using an editor that is older than I am is boomer energy. But I get it. Okay. Any last questions? Aria, please do send me a message. Come hang out in chat. Baum, good to see you. I know I've seen you a couple times. Alexandra, thanks for the questions. Let me know if you feel like reviewing this. Please do poke holes in any parts, and in general, if you see unsafe code where you go, what the fuck is that, then let me know and I'll add more comments. Yeah, you sure do. Just happy to have you here. Okay, then that's about it, unless anyone has any questions. I'll probably merge this as I do, and then try and get a full demo. We're like 80% to a full demo of this, and so I'm very excited. So then the other 20% is getting a TCP version of this all the way working, so that we can kind of like Alexandra was saying, make up okay, this is nested 7 layers deep, and then where it could work on microcontrollers, and then I will need to get I can finally get my RS-45 stuff going. I don't know how visible this is, and there's lag, so I'm gonna just hold this up. I'm waiting for it to show up on the YouTube video. I should just have the OBS window open. Okay, well, I'm hoping this is visible and you can see these, but these are my RS-45. Yeah, okay, it worked. Those are my RS-45 boards, and so I can have USB to the first one, and then over serial ports or RS-45, I can daisy chain them and things like that. So that'll be a whole thing. If that works before my presentation next week, that'd be dope. But if not, then, you know, we can have some sweet TCP demos running. But yeah, I'm pumped. Thank you all. I hope you all had a wonderful week. If you're watching the VOD, thank you. Say hi in the comments. And I'll see you all next week or in chat. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.